What does this 10-ton carrier unit and this 3-ton mini split have in common? Nothing, except for I put them both in a bus. So this past week I was asked about a long form version of a video I did a few months ago. And today I'm going to tackle that video. We're going to get a little more in depth about the duct mini split that we put in this bus. Also with the bus air, kind of how that went together, and just some of the ins and outs, challenges, different things, some of which I did cover in the other video, so you may want to go back. Regardless, I do these videos just to help people out, to kind of just share our journey, but then also people have questions. They're thinking of doing the same thing. And that's how I learned. I learned a lot by going back on YouTube and watching stuff. So hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, questions. I'd love to help. Let's get into the video. So the biggest challenge of this bus is we wanted to keep the over-the-road air. We also wanted to have the mini split option. And one thing about that is, how do you keep cool running down the road? Well, it makes sense to me. You've already got an amazing 10-ton unit. Use that over the road. And then also it's going to save you on the front end of not having to buy a generator or enough solar to run everything, so on and so forth, because that can get very, very pricey. Speaking of pricey, that is the one drawback to keeping the over-the-road air system. It is very expensive to maintain if something goes haywire on you. That compressor right there is $3,500, and $2,500 to $3,000 refurbished, so on and so forth. I realized I said that a lot, so I apologize. But and I know people can probably speak into this as maybe you find one cheaper or used or this, that, or the other, but knowing the systems is a big deal as well. I was going to open this bay, but it's actually just a condenser fan. Now, it does have some plumbing when the bay comes open, receiver tank, dryer, different things like that. Back to knowing and learning, man, these buses, you learn something every day. But right now I've got a low pressure sensor, and it's not low on Freon necessarily. At least we put 25 pounds in it, which is the capacity the other day, and still showing it. So I've got to figure that out. But at the end of the day, maintaining these systems definitely can be pricey. However, I personally think it's worth it in the long run, because I'm not spending $6,000-$7,000 on a generator, even that $3,000 or $4,000, and then if I tried to do solar, it's going to be the same thing just to run the mini split, which is not going to keep up. So let me show y'all something inside. So there you got your driver and passenger AC head, and that's the other side to it. The driver area gets super hot with all these windows. I mean, these windows are amazing. However, the heat is really hard to keep the heat out of here when you're driving. I don't care if it's 65 degrees outside. So definitely, I think this is the better choice if you can make it work. I know I said I'd keep the commentary down to a minimum, and I'm trying. I really am. If you know me, I have a lot to say. However, I do need to say a couple things. There is a reason why they run 5 roof mount airs on an entertainer coach. Even if it were 3/4 ton AC units, you're still talking almost 4 tons. And the reason why they do it, they got 12 bodies plus a driver. They're trying to keep everything cool. That's a lot. So here's my word of wisdom as far as a bus conversion. Get as much as you can. Get the biggest unit you can. There you go. That's my word of wisdom. But anyway, back to the duct mini split. I know that's why you're here, so let's talk about it. So we got the duct mini split because we didn't want the head, and let's talk about how we did it. All right, so here's the biggest challenge. This whole cargo bay turned into a return. So technically that grill right there would have a plenum, which is, for those of you that don't know, is basically that big ductboard box that has all the air ducts coming off of it. It would normally have a big plenum coming off of it and return air coming to that. right? Well, that's a problem. We didn't have anywhere big enough to put a plenum. So my father-in-law said, hey, why don't we just make the cargo bay a plenum? Which is great. Except for now, you got to get air from the coach to the bay. So I had to cut as many holes and as much air flow as I could get to come down into this bay. So that's challenge number one, the return bay. If you watch the other video, I explain a little bit better as to how I married the all over-the-road air and the mini split. I used a chase. I tried to use diverters. That didn't really work out that well. I'm just kind of willy-nilly and probably losing some of the bus air, maybe even some of the mini split air down the pipe. But it kind of is what it is. So then you got the supply. So that is coming off. That's going, this one right here is going into that chase I just talked about. I'll show a little clip of that here in a second. But then we kept having to actually add supply lines. And let me just go inside and I'll show you all why. But before I do, I want to show you all this. So this conundrum up here is actually more flex pipe that I have going strategically to different areas. You see that hole right there with the cheese cloth, because I don't have my vents yet. That is actually the return, kind of filtering some of our good old golden retriever dog hair from getting down into this bay, because it was just sucking it right down here. So this goes into the other side of the bus chase, and here actually you can see a lot better footage of the plenum. So that's what I did for the supply side of things. Also, while I'm down here, before I go upstairs, let me make note of this. This particular drain system was supposed to be with a float switch, and just being honest, it was, because maybe you didn't get the bus level, maybe whatever, it was actually leaking. So what I did to remedy that, I just went in here because it had these were capped off. And I don't really forget what the manual said as to why these were there. It was, you're supposed to use a float switch, don't use these, yada yada. But you don't want water, obviously you want it to drain. So that's what I did. I tapped off these and the float switch. As you can see, it goes up, T's over there, it goes down, and the drain is all happy, and I have not had any issues whatsoever from there. So there's a better picture of that grill, that return air, sucking that air right up in there. The thing is just shake, rattle, and roll. There ain't nothing holding that up. So I'll show you all these mounts real quick. I did suspend these with rubber mounts over here. Suspended. Alright, so that's a little bit of that. Let's go inside and talk ductwork. Trying to not make this video kind of wonky or redundant, because I'm like, okay, what did I forget that I haven't said or whatever? Because like I said before, I'm not scripting, y'all. Not because I couldn't do a script, but I don't like it disingenuous. I want it to be as genuine, as authentic, as real as possible. So that's what you get with old Johnny. Yeah, Gus is real. And so let's talk ductwork. So underneath this couch is some ductwork. Now, what I was saying about strategically placing these vents, that vent goes to the end of this couch and it blows up. I wanted it kind of as close to the window as possible. I actually got it blowing in. And I laid that carpet pad down there and a little bit of carpet, mainly try to deaden some of the sound. That's really what I know. It looks a little, not so nice underneath here, but just trying to keep some of the sound down. So that right there, though, is very important. That's return for the bus air. And so we've got to keep that as open as possible. Now, if you look, that steel chase right there goes right there, and that blows on me while I'm driving. Remember what I said, that's super important. For those of you that saw the wires, yes, I can't wait to get all that covered up this summer. Spring, summer is probably when I'll do that. Maybe the winter if I get bored. So there's another vent. Now this one was a little interesting. I made a little box just to cover that vent up because we have two vents, like I said, not done, but two vents. One is the bus supply and one is the mini split supply. So that is blowing mini split. Actually, both of them, are both blowing mini split. On the bus side, it's just the bottom of the main bus chase. But this area got so stinking hot up here that we had to add some air. And so that was part of the reason why I wound up with so many flex. I started out with the two main bus chases. That didn't really work out that well, mainly because of the heat up in the front. So there is that, and there's air, and there's air on that side as well. And let me show y'all, I don't believe, well, I can't see in there. My wife has sheets and stuff. Let's see what we got in here. Oh, kid stuff. Well, you can see there's flex, and it's running off that, actually, that's running back behind the fridge. Can't really get that. Yeah, that ain't gonna work. I tried, y'all. I did try. Anyway, that is running. I will show y'all something that my wife's gonna be like, I cannot believe you did this. And that's fine. That's how I roll. I wind up trying to be authentic, right? So there's where those chases and all that stuff's coming out right up in there, which y'all saw from the bottom. But that chase, the flex pipe, I've got a chase and a flex pipe running to the back. And so that's where that's going. Let me show y'all that without this janky footage. So y'all are going to know all my little secrets here. So that right there, it looks good. Little knee wall, sort of, behind the toilet. That's actually just to cover up the AC vents. So let me show you all that. When I said AC vents, I should have said that singular because there is no vent. It is vent. And that is one of the downfalls of what we got going on right now. So that is our lonely vent. Now you can see it blowing the makeshift curtains right now. And it works. And it keeps my side of the bed mighty chilly. However, what was supposed to happen is, see those two vents right here, they come, you got one that is mini split, and this other one is bus air. And so the mini split, my design, if you will, was to blow through the door and, you know, kind of pull air into there, push air into there, however you want to put that. So that was the idea. You know, I can't say it really works. It's a little warmer than in the bunk area, and it's a little cooler in winter. So still working on that, right? It's always a process. So that right there is the return for the bus air. Not ideal to be so close to the supply. I'm sure somebody will call me out on that. Usual, having technical difficulties. Oh well. Return, supply, bus air. And let's see, actually, underneath here, because we haven't put all the fascia up yet. So there's your supply lines running. And so that, one other thing with this that I mentioned in the other video is low static versus high static systems. With this bus air, and the guy that was talking to me the other day, he's putting his in a, wanting to put a duct mini split in a fifth wheel. And just be honest with you, the return side is going to be the hardest thing. Supply, you can probably get away with it. Return side, it's going to be a little tough to get a big enough return to get the thing to function properly. The biggest problem with what I did was the low static versus high static system. So the bus air is pushing a lot of air. I mean, a lot of air, y'all. That thing is huge. You saw the blowers. Well, the other system, mini split, is low static, meaning it's that the back pressure on it's low. And I'm butchering the static pressure, but basically it's got to have a lot of vent, a lot of supply lines run. And so that was one of the challenges that I run into. So let's talk about one last thing, I believe. Last but not least was the install. So getting those copper lines in there, technically, you got to have at least 10 feet, I believe it was. Could be wrong. Got to go by the manufacturer, obviously. But we only went to one extra bay, right? So we didn't necessarily have a lot of room to run 15 foot of copper line. Or I think it came in a 15 foot. We could have cut it down. We didn't, and so on and so forth. So, I know I said it again, there's so on and so forth. I guess that's my saying for nowadays. Anyway, so what we did, we looped that line around. My father-in-law did to his liking. He's been doing it for 40 years, 50 years, doing AC work. So that's what we did to remedy that little situation. Let me go around the other side and I'll show you where those lines go. So I did notice one other thing I did not actually cover. So notice the copper line, see the foam down there. The copper line comes out that wall, and then I have it looped around. It connects up there. So that's that. Pretty easy peasy. Now let's get into the wiring. I actually kind of almost forgot that, right? Probably the most important reason why I have kept the bus air and not just the mini split is because that mini split is 240, 220, whatever you want to call it. And that system will not run off of just regular, 110 plug. It's got to have two hots. That gets into a bigger inverter or a bigger battery set, or, there's a lot of, things you got to think about. They do sell 110 mini splits. However, they only come with the head unit, right? And I told you that was one of my things is did not want a head unit. I didn't want to look, too ghetto, if you will. So I went ahead and just got the 240 and split the systems and so on and so forth. So here's our disconnect right here for the mini split. And I run a 10-2 wire, or well, I guess 10-3 technically. 10-3 over. I'll show y'all. Since I've got my panel, I'll give y'all a little quick little insight as to how I wired the bus as well. So you notice there's two 50s and a 30, right? Top of to the electrical bay and shit. All right, that orange wire comes from that breaker panel over here. This is the inverter. It is feeding that panel over there. Also, there's my converter because that keeps those batteries. Those batteries are for our 12-volt lights, 12-volt water pump while we're running down the road, stuff like that. And then that inverter actually will, it'll run TVs, power phones, stuff like that. So the orange wire for the mini split goes from here over to the disconnect right next to the outside unit, and that is a double pole breaker, 30 amp, that actually feeds, that is the breaker for the AC. And remember, you got to have 240, so you got to have two hots. So there is that. And then also there's, I'll show y'all over on the outside unit real quick. So there's also some communication wires you got to deal with. Those come out of the outside unit, and then they actually go over here and go in there to the inside unit. And then there's a little I've got my line run up with all my other wiring up into the coach to get to the thermostat. All right, guys, that's probably enough of me yakking. I'm sorry, this video feels a little more discombobulated than normal. Probably because I didn't get to practice all week driving, whatever. We did get a Buc-ee's last night, though. That was pretty fun. Anyway, just took the bus over, went to Buc-ee's, hung out. If you got a question, johnnyscusbus@gmail.com. Just hit me up. A lot of people have, commented, and then I comment back, and then maybe they didn't get that. There's the email address. Comment, like, subscribe. That. Anyway, hope to get some more content out here soon. Fixing to get into busy season at my work, so we'll see how that all goes. Still wanting to get the bus, school bus versus coach bus video up. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Y'all just follow along. Appreciate it, guys.